Good afternoon, and welcome to our committee meetings of the State Transportation Board for here in November. I'm going to start off with our Intermodal Committee, and we are going to hear from Cody Dupree. He's our Aviation Planning Manager. He's going to give us a report on the Airport Pavement Evaluation Study updates. So thank you, Cody, for being here.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Intermodal Committee members, State Transportation Board members, and Deputy Commissioner Heath. My name is Cody Dupree, and I'm the Aviation Planning Manager for the Division of Intermodal, here today to talk to you about the 2025 Airport Pavement Statewide Study. This program is a critical part of how we assess and maintain plan improvements for airport pavements across the state. To give some background, GDOT first implemented a statewide pavement management system back in 1998. Since then, it's been updated periodically to keep the data condition assessment current. The 2025 update is the latest in that ongoing series and is now nearing completion. The system currently includes 102 system-wide airports, which covers both general aviation and commercial service facilities, excluding Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. This broad coverage ensures that GDOT and airport sponsors have an intentional and proactive plan to monitor, address pavement conditions across the entire state, from regional airfields to major commercial facilities. The purpose of APMS is to help us monitor, manage the pavement condition across Georgia system airports. By tracking this data, we are able to better communicate the financial needs of the system, ensure our maintenance and rehabilitation decisions are both optimal and cost-effective. This system also allows us to meet federal requirements, Grant Assurance 11 and public law, which mandate that all publicly funded airports maintain a pavement management system. GDOT provides this system for our public airports to meet these federal requirements, as 90% of states provide this service to their airports. In short, APMS gives us a data-driven foundation for maintaining safe, reliable, and financially sustainable airport infrastructure overall, while meeting federal requirements statewide. Now that we've covered the purpose of APMS, this slide outlines how the process actually works. It begins with the system inventory, where we identify all pavement assets across Georgia's airport system. From there, we move into making sure each pavement section is clearly defined and accurately mapped. Next, our teams perform condition assessments. These are on-site visual inspections to document pavement distress, types, and severities. After that, we move into where the data is processed to evaluate trends, forecast needs, and prioritize projects. The results feed into our deliverables, which include statewide reports and our IDEA tool. Finally, we close the loop with training and outreach, ensuring our airport sponsors, stakeholders understand the process, the data, and how to use the information effectively. This slide covers how we define pavement conditions using the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI. The PCI methodology was first established in the early 1980s and has been widely adopted in the aviation industry. Unlike roadway and bridge designs, PCI follows FAA Advisory Circular Guidance. This process is the industry standard for visually assessing, monitoring condition of airport pavements. It provides a consistent, objective, and repeatable way to evaluate pavement health over time. Essentially, it helps us quantify the pavement condition we see on the surface, so we can better make data-driven decisions about maintenance and rehabilitation priorities. The PCI is a standardized rating from 0 to 100 that reflects overall pavement health, based on observed distresses like cracking, rattling, and patching. A score in the 70s is generally considered in the satisfactory range, while pavement below a satisfactory range is considered in major rehabilitation conditions or reconstruction, which can result in extensive maintenance costs. Conditions above satisfactory are considered preventative maintenance, where conditions can be improved with less costly maintenance measures to preserve the life of the pavement. This slide represents a visual example of pavement conditions present at Georgia airports. These are from our 2025 pavement study. Now shifting to the results. This slide gives us a snapshot of the system's overall pavement inventory and its relative age. The total pavement area across Georgia's airports continues to grow. In 2012, we had 155 million square feet. That increased in 2018, and today we are at roughly 155 million square feet. That growth reflects continued investment in expanding airport infrastructure across the state. On the other hand, we are also seeing a gradual increase in the average pavement age. It's now about 19 years compared to 18 in 2018 and 16 in 2012. So while our total pavement area is expanding, the average age is also climbing. Now let's take a closer look at the PCI across different airport categories, pavement types with general aviation system. This chart summarizes the average PCI for all airports combined, general aviation, and commercial service airports. The combined PCI is 71, runways are in slightly better shape at 73, taxiways at 72, however aprons and parking areas show a drop with an average of PCI of 66. Taxi lanes slightly lower at 65. General aviation airports, we see a similar trend with slightly lower values. The total PCI is at 68 with runways at 72 and taxiways at 69. Commercial service airport pavement conditions are strong across all categories. The PCI here is 78 with runways and aprons both at 78 and 79, taxiways at 79. Even the taxi lane areas remain in satisfactory conditions, 72 compared to general aviation facilities. Overall, these findings highlight a trend that commercial airports maintain stronger pavement conditions system-wide, while general aviation conditions trend below the target PCI. The current inspection cycle, the overall PCI, is a 71, which is consistent with our 2018 value, but down slightly from 2012, or 77 in 2012. This shows that while conditions have stabilized since the last cycle, we are still trending in a satisfactory condition. When we break it down by airport type, general aviation airports average a PCI of 68, while commercial service airports are higher at 78. Overall, our statewide network remains in satisfactory range, and overall historical PCI results show a flat trend over time. This slide outlines two primary sources of funding that support pavement enhancement projects: federal AIP funds and state aid. On the federal side, study airports qualify for FAA discretionary and entitlement funding through the Airport Improvement, or AIP. Since 2013, Georgia airports, excluding Hartsfield-Jackson, have received an average of $76.6 million annually in AIP funding. Over the past 20 years, those funding levels have remained relatively stable. However, with Congress reauthorization, the AIP in 2024, there's a potential annual national funding increase from $3.35 billion to $4 billion, a pending appropriation. On the state side, study airports also qualify for state aid. State airport funding has an average of $22.6 million annually since 2013. Importantly, total annual state funding has grown significantly, just from $5 million to over $40 million over the past 2 decades. This funding foundation is prioritized through a standardized national priority ranking system, placing special emphasis on safety projects and ensuring funds are utilized to best address the most pressing safety needs at our airports. This slide highlights one of the key challenges facing airport pavement projects: the rapid escalation in construction costs. Federal AIP funding levels remain essentially unchanged for the past 20 years. However, in recent years, the cost for both labor and materials have risen sharply. To put this in perspective, a project that cost $1.7 million in 2015 would now be expected to cost around $3.2 million by 2025, an increase of nearly 86% over a 10-year period. As the previous slide showed us, current escalation levels have increased construction costs over recent years. When all 102 public airports in Georgia are considered, the total annual statewide economic activity is estimated at almost $74 billion. Since statewide economic impacts for all public airports were last measured in 2011, they have increased by 18%. As shown in this slide, 90% of all airport-related economic impacts are associated with Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, while 10% is attributed to the 102 airports in our study. The 102 airports support total statewide employment estimated at 450,500 jobs, and as these employees have an estimated payroll of about $20 billion. This slide compares the projected funding needs with the actual investments made in Georgia's airport pavement program. In the 2012 update, the analysis projected a need for $30 million annually to achieve a pavement condition index, or PCI, of 80 by 2017. The program's actual investment was $12 million per year, or about $71 million total. By the 2018 update, the projected need had nearly doubled to $58 million annually to reach the same PCI target by 2024. Since 2020, the program has invested approximately $296 million total, or about $49 million per year in airfield pavements. The overall average PCI has remained relatively flat over this trend. This slide details how pavement conditions perform under a constrained funding scenario, which aims to maintain system health while prioritizing limited resources effectively. Under this scenario, the goal is to keep pavements above their critical PCI threshold, the point at which repair costs rise significantly. For general aviation airports, the total estimated funding requirement is about $33 million. The largest needs for primary runways at $11 million, with a target PCI of 75. Aprons and helipads follow at $9 million, aiming for a PCI of 65. Other key areas like taxiways and taxi lanes require $6 million and $2 million respectively. For commercial service airports, the total funding need is $11.5 million. Runways and aprons both target a PCI of 80, with annual needs around $3 million. Other supporting pavements, including taxiways and taxi lanes, require smaller but essential allocations. Overall, this funding strategy projects an average PCI of 73. After 5 years, that means the system would be in fair to good condition. Next, let's review the estimated funding needs identified through the APMS analysis. Over a 5-year period, the unlimited funding need, meaning the amount required to bring all pavements up to optimal condition, totals about $640 million statewide. Of that, $536 million would be needed for general aviation airports, while $104 million for commercial service airports. The graph shows how these funding levels impact future pavement conditions, showing average as a PCI. Without any funding, pavement conditions would drop significantly to about 62 by 2030. Maintaining the constrained funding scenario, PCI stays relatively stable at 73, but with an annual investment of about $128 million, conditions could improve to a PCI of 85. In summary, the graph shows a higher and more sustained investment would be required to achieve meaningful improvements in Georgia's airport pavement infrastructure. So as part of this study, GDOT acquired the Interactive Data Exploration and Analysis, or IDEA tool. This is a customized web-based reporting platform developed specifically for GDOT's pavement management needs. Created as part of this project, IDEA provides instant, on-demand access to commonly requested pavement management data through an intuitive and interactive interface. The tool integrates graph, tables, maps, photographs, and hyperlinks to present statewide pavement statistics and inventory information, past, current, and projected PCI values, geo-reference inspection photos, color-coded airport maps overlaid on aerial imagery, maintenance and rehabilitation recommendations, and comprehensive reports and detailed PCI procedure documentation. Overall, IDEA enhances data transparency, improves decision-making efficiency, and gives GDOT staff a powerful tool to visualize, manage pavement performance statewide. The digital database also provides information to airport sponsors for their airport's future plans and pavement maintenance needs. The IDEA tool includes aerial imagery, PCI-weighted pavement conditions, and an overall picture of the airfield's pavement past and present. This tool will allow airport sponsors a digital outline of their pavement needs to provide GDOT staff with a digital tool to plan pavement infrastructure needs. In summary, Georgia's steady airports are vital to the state's economy, and continued investment is essential to meet transportation needs and maintain their roles as economic engines. The pavement management study is a federal requirement and helps our airports preserve the pavement life of their airports. The next step will be to release these findings to our airports to utilize the information to best fit pavement maintenance needs. Thank you for your time today. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I've got a couple of questions. One is, can we find this data on the website?
Yes, it will be available. We haven't released it publicly yet until after this, but.
Okay, and I don't expect an answer to this question, but I just wonder where we rank in the United States as far as availability of airports, because it looks like we've got a lot of smaller airports, which is wonderful. But I'm just curious how we rank for aviation, I guess, access.
Like just number of airports that we have compared to others?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know Florida has just as many, right around what we have. I think North Carolina has 170, but I can definitely get you that information.
Okay, well, I don't expect an answer anyway, so, but
Okay.
I'm just thinking, but it's very interesting. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Roswell?
Yeah, you'd mentioned pavement. We weren't moving as quickly, repaving. Is pavement lasting longer, or is it we've got less funding?
I think the funding trend stayed relatively stable, and then the PCI trend is also relatively stable. And I think that's attributed to maybe the area. If you saw the area went up, we've increased some capacity with pavements.
Okay.
And that's probably what's resulting in that trend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very interesting. So with that, we're going to finish this committee meeting up and move to the next one.
Thank you.
I'm going to call the Legislative Committee to order and ask Josh Waller, our Director of Policy and Government Affairs, to present for us.
Thank you, Chairman Snipes. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, full board, Deputy Commissioner, thank you for the opportunity to give this update as the year is rattling on. This is a pretty customary agenda. First, we're going to do the proposed 2026 legislative agenda that you'll review this month, and then we'll take action next month. Do a quick election recap from the T-SPLOST, and then do a federal update. So first up on the annual housekeeping bill, the first proposed item would align and consolidate most of GDOT's various reporting requirements set in statute into the annual report, which we have here, this annual investment report. These standalone reports range from value engineering summaries to the P3 program, to outdoor advertising, to wildflowers report and the beautification. And they run the gamut on frequency. Some are annual, some are biennial, some are quarterly. Some are due on February 1st, some on March 1st, some on February 15th, July 1st, and even one is due on Halloween. So for the sake of the outdoor advertising office and their ability to go trick-or-treating, it would be good to get them all consolidated into one report. So that's, so we would codify that they would be put into this when we submit to General Assembly at the start of the year. The second item, so the next two items deal really with just going back 10 years ago when these thresholds were set. We're now 10 years later. We know what the impact of inflation. You've seen the presentations on construction costs. You've seen the presentations on the cost of real estate. And so it's really just adjusting those for inflation. So the second item would raise the threshold for a state-funded project to be subject to the Georgia Environmental Policy Act documentation requirement. Let me underscore documentation requirement. Whether we're exempt from NEPA or exempt from GEPA, we have to abide by all environmental laws. It's just a matter of whether or not we're required to do a documentation process to attest to the fact that we're going to comply with the laws. So this threshold was set about 10 years ago at 100 million. So with that adjustment, it would bring it to about 200 million. So last month you'll had a presentation on either the last month or the month before on surplus right-of-way and our efforts to do to more aggressively market and sell these parcels that we don't need. Obviously, we have some of these parcels that really aren't economic. They're not attractive. The only likely seller or purchaser would be the adjacent property owner. And so there's a threshold in the code for an expedited sale or a streamlined disposal. And that threshold was set about 10 years ago at 75,000, so we would raise it to 150, again, to help improve that streamlined disposal. And again, you're talking about many of these are uneconomic remnants. They don't have access. The most likely candidate to purchase it would be an adjacent property owner. So the last item deals with, the last few years we've had major investment of surplus funds. And as we look to advance multiple widenings of our interstates, one concern has emerged, is that if they are delivered by a design build, with the volume of work coming, it could run in conflict with the 50% of the prior year's capital program cap. So the proposal would be to make sure that these projects stay on track, to just remove that 50% cap from the design build requirement. And it was put in place years ago, 20 years ago, when design build was novel, new. There were safeguards put in place until industry, the department, everyone could get more comfortable, understand the lay of the land. But now that requirement, it's not been a challenge before, but looking forward, as you've had some years where we have, additional funding above and beyond, it puts it in conflict. If you think about the prior year had less, so if you're 50% of the prior year, the concern is it could get in the way of us being able to timely deliver an interstate widening project. So with that, I don't know, it might be good. Are there any questions on agenda items here? All right, I will transition over. So obviously there were some elections this month, and there were 8 T-SPLOST elections. All of them passed. 3 were brand new counties. You can see there Chattooga, Cherokee, and Jackson. You should have a map that shows all the counties that have a T-SPLOST. Now there are 115 of 159, that's 72% of counties that are either collecting a T-SPLOST, a dedicated T-SPLOST, or in a tier region. So you should be able to see it's a color-coded map. I want to give a shout out to Parker Hamilton on my team. He did some GIS work to pull that together, so a good reference for you as to when these may come up. Also following this election, there has been, I don't know if anyone's heard, but apparently there are a few state senators that are running for statewide office. Have you heard that, Mr. Chairman?
I've heard that.
And so the cascading impact of that is that 2 of them had to resign from their leadership position, which following I guess a week and a half ago, they had the elections for the upcoming leadership slate. Senator Larry Walker will be the pro tem, and he's pro tem designate because they actually have to wait till the session convenes for the whole Senate to elect him to that position, which is the senatorial position in the state Senate. Senator Jason Amatardi is the new majority leader that formerly was held by Steve Gooch. Senator JFK was formerly the pro tem. And you can see Randy Robertson, whip. Sean Still, Majority Caucus Chair, Clint Dixon, Majority Caucus Vice Chair, and Senator Kay Kirkpatrick, Majority Caucus Secretary. So with that, I will transition to the federal update. It's been pretty quick. So obviously this has been the more interesting one. So obviously everyone saw the news. The federal government got reopened with a continuing resolution that was signed on November the 12th. As a reminder, there was about a 43-day period where there was a lapse in appropriations. Because of the way that most of US DOT was actually able to continue to operate, because a lot of its operations are funded out of the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which is primarily governed by the authorization bill that's passed every 5 years. So in this case, the IIJA. The Appropriations Act typically sits on top of that and further constrains what's allowed in the authorization. So for this window of 43 days, Federal Highway theoretically could have allowed states to authorize a full year's worth. They put out the word that they would strongly advise states not to do that, because when a CR is passed and it limits it, they may have to claw back dollars above and beyond, which is what happened. So this current CR, or not clawing back, but this CR only goes through, this continuing resolution only goes through January the 30th, which means that we are now going from sort of IIJA open authorization to a pro rata share for 122 days. And the commissioner mentioned this at the Transportation Summit last week, and that's essentially about a third of what we should be getting. And he underscored the challenge is going to be, obviously, what is Congress going to do? What is the next, when you get to January 30th, do we get a full year's funding at that point? Or are we short-term CR? But it's something we're going to have to continue to very closely monitor, because it will have an impact, because of the way that the state and federal fiscal years align and how we have to draw down and match our state funds with federal funds. It puts us at a little bit more risk on these short-term CRs. So that is something The Senate right now is trying to do the work to cobble together another kind of minibus. That's where they take a few of the Appropriations Act and band them together. There's about 5 they're looking at right now, and thankfully transportation is one of them. But they've not yet got progress on that. But that would be good, obviously, to get a full year transportation appropriation on the president's desk as soon as possible. But again, that's where we are now. And again, a lot will hinge on between now and January 30th. What are we talking about? Another short-term CR, another lapse. So stay tuned. But that is something just to underscore that and as the commissioner underscored, it definitely will require us to be very careful and have to evaluate whether certain projects may have to be let at a later date, depending on availability of federal funds. And with that, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have any questions? And then Josh, you just remind everybody, am I correct that the legislative agenda will be presented to the full board next month for approval?
So we'll come back to the committee. Custom has come back to committee. Committee will then weigh in on it, and then it will go to the full board for approval. And certainly, if you have any questions today or in the interim, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'd be glad to answer it. And
Thank you, Josh. And with that, legislative committee is adjourned.
Okay. With that, I'd like to call to order the P3 committee. And today we've got Mr. John Hubert, right? Hubert, Deputy Chief Engineer, who's going to talk about the NEVI Round 2 overview. John?
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Commissioner. I'm John Hibbert again, and I'm glad to be here today. And the topic of the day is NEVI Round 2. Okay, NEVI, and so over the course of this time I am before you, I'm going to present a little of an overview, yes, of Round 2, but I'm going to back up a little bit and kind of bring us up to level set as to what is NEVI generally. I'm going to summarize or run through the award recommendations, because there's several of them, and then lay before you for your consideration a motion that would carry forth to the board meeting tomorrow. NEVI, as Josh mentioned IIJA in his remarks earlier, NEVI is a specific pot of federal formula money that was identified and put in the IIJA to greatly expand the amount of EV charging sites across the country. So it's formula funding, so Georgia gets its share as determined by formula. And so that's what we're talking about here. A while back, over a year ago, we were before you and you approved the Round 1 NEVI procurement, which was just 5 sites. And those 5, good news, are all proceeding. They're all in various phases of development, and in fact, one of them will open before the end of the year. They've already made those indications, and further, when you look at it, yeah, it's about there, and that's good news. That's good news. But this that I'm about to lay into here is Round 2, and there's more to it than just 5. So Round 2, okay, first, the concept of these things called alternate fuel corridors, AFCs. Sorry, one of many acronyms, right? The roads that you see on this map before you, all of those are alternate fuel corridors, which were identified gradually over a period of several years. You see most of them are interstates, but not all of them. There's several of them, US 27, 441, US 82, US 76, that are alternate fuel corridors, simply a designation saying that they are a corridor worth emphasizing for alternate fuel capabilities. To try to cover reasonably the roads in the state. Round 2 locations, like with Round 1, are selected to ensure that there are not excessive gaps between charging stations on these AFCs. And the round 2 locations are the red dots that you see here before you. Red dots, they have a number next to them. That red dot is a rough representation of a radius around each interchange where the actual charging site could be. It had to be within a certain area. And for this round 2, we advertised 33 sites. Just as a reminder, the round 1 locations are on this map. They have blue diamonds, and there are 2 of them south of Macon on I-75, Byron and Tifton. Those are round 1 locations. There's 2 of them on I-16, Dublin and Metter, and there's 1 of them on I-95 at Brunswick. The rest of the blue diamonds that you see scattered across this map are existing private sector charging sites that play into that spacing and gap determination. This procurement that we are wrapping up and bringing before you today was a best value procurement, where we evaluated the proposals technically and financially, and both scores, technical scores, financial scores, are combined to create a consolidated score for each site, each proposer at each site, and to help determine who the successful proposer would be for each one. This NEVI funding, as a lot of federal formula funding is, so to speak, 80-20 funding. 80% federal, but in the case of NEVI, the 20% here in Georgia is 20% the share brought forth by the proposer. So there is not state funding in this project to accomplish these things. It's federal, which was as identified and laid out in the IIJA, and that brought forth by the proposer, their share. In the next slide, I'm going to start running through a list of 26 sites that we're bringing to you for your consideration. And here is the first page of them. You'll note that as you look at them, and I'm not going to read every one of them out for you, but sometimes you will see 2 counties listed up there, Daughtry and Worth, Early and Clay as example. And that's where that radius that I showed you on the prior slide, in fact, touches 2 different counties. And so we refer to them in that manner, even though ultimately the final site will only be in 1 county for any location. So you see, as we walk down the column with the recommended best value proposal, you'll see some names that are familiar, Pilot. You'll see some others that might not be quite so familiar to you. Silver Comet Energy is closely related to Racetrack. EnviroSpark is a firm that we worked with, is part of our round 1 procurement. Here's the second page of recommended best value performers. You see Love's Travel Stops here. You see Pilot again. And you see some that you might have seen on the previous slide too. And then this is the third and last page of sites. The 3 together total up 26 sites. And you see names again that you've seen on the prior couple of slides. Across these 26 sites are 6 different proposers. In other words, all of those, you sort them that way, so to speak, and you get 6 different providers that won various numbers of these sites. So with that concludes my formal presentation. Certainly I welcome questions that you may have about this, but at the same time I invite your consideration of what might be a motion before you to refer this to the full board for their consideration tomorrow. So with that, I will stop, and I welcome questions.
Question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And, John, could you tell me, are the locations, like for instance, when you come up with Love or whatever on, properties by, a gas station, similar like that? Is that generally how these have been chosen?
For many of what I just showed you, and I'm just going to back up to one slide as kind of to talk from, bear with me. So when you see Love's there,
Right.
or you see Pilot, not on that slide, typically they're doing it at at one of their existing store locations.
Okay, and,
Some on this list, though, are at new sites. And
okay,
there's a couple on this list. Those that EnviroSpark proposed are all at restaurants. They're at Waffle Houses.
all right, and to provide these, to get the awards, for the people that have made the proposals there, is there some sort of pricing scheme? You know, I've been told that, there are various prices for electricity. Some are awful high at charging stations along the way. So when we actually give out money to people to produce them, is there some limitation or something that says these will be affordable for, the general public as a whole?
There is recognition that, that prices can vary. There are statements made in the agreements that go towards ensuring fairness in what they do, not simply in pricing, but in how you, in fact, pay for the charging, recognizing that people may come to one of these locations with a variety of capabilities to pay. And so all of that has to be taken into account in the agreements.
I take from your answer that there's no hard concrete, there's just general principles. We sure would appreciate if you charged a fair price to the public.
No concrete, because the circumstances that surround the price they may have to pay for electricity vary remarkably, and they are not necessarily so predictable. When will they be stuck with, quote, a high electric bill, and when will they not be? It varies on a whole bunch of factors that may conspire one day and not the next.
Okay. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you. Couple of questions, John. Thank you for that presentation. Roughly, how many actual chargers are at each location?
At each one of these that I'm talking about right here, there will be 4, minimum of 4. They could put in more if they wanted to, but we only obligate them to put in 4. So that would be literally 4 boxes stuck in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps each one has a cable that comes off of it that could plug into a car.
Right.
Yeah.
My other question, I'm looking at the project payment cap up here, and, you know, the numbers are different for each location. Why are the numbers different for each location?
Because what they're having to do, what each proposer is having to do at each location is unique and varies. Some of these locations as are at an existing facility where there's already pavement in place,
Okay.
and so their costs perhaps are lower. Some of these locations are greenfield locations, and they will be starting from scratch.
But at the end of it all, every proposer is receiving roughly 80%, and then they match their 20%?
They bring their 20%, yes, sir.
So those numbers represent more or less the 80% for each location?
80%.
Okay,
And it's federal, yes.
thanks.
If I might just clarify a few things, just, Mr. Lewis, to that point there, that table, what you're looking at, those were the received price proposals and the best value selection for each site. So each site was competed as its own procurement, where we solicited bids for each site to be evaluated under those best value criteria. So what you're seeing there is the price proposal for the apparent best value selection for that company, that bid, right? So how that shook out, that's that price component that you're seeing, is what you're seeing there. And then, Mr. Stein, to your comments, each proposer was asked to bring not only, who's going to install the charging station, but it's part of your proposal, that partnership, and what specific site you are proposing, whether that be in partnership with what's known as a site host. So think of that as a gas station. Some of these are at a Waffle House or a hotel. Others, as John alluded to, are greenfield. So that was a requirement in the proposal that they bring forward that specific location. So that's what's driving that piece. And then on the actual electricity rates, what enables these sites to sort of pencil out is the utilization of the charging stations, right? They want to drive a customer base to use those charging stations. So that's going to drive sort of market competition with that site relative to other sites that already exist, right? So they want to see that utilization happen, and that's what's going to drive that pricing component.
If I may, one more question, Madam Chair. So when one of these locations are up and running, like, I think I noticed one that appears to be in the Adairsville area off I-75, how will someone know that there's a charging station there? Is there going to be some signage out there or other ways of notifying the EV travelers?
And John may be able to speak to this as he is an EV owner, and he's very well aware. A number of these EV charging companies have apps that talk about the location of where these are. So that's one way, right? So as you're operating an EV, driving across the state, you have an app that looks at racetrack locations or looks at name your provider. You could see those show up on the map all across the state. The other thing too, there is now an allowance on the blue logo signs to show where EV charging is available as well.
Exactly. So they will appear, or you'll gradually see them showing up on those blue logo signs. But yeah, I have any number of apps on my phone, and Google Maps is starting to show EV charging locations on it as well. So lots of different ways to come together. Other questions?
Hearing no other questions, thank you. We're going to do the vote tomorrow, correct?
Yes, but we would appreciate this committee's action in referring it to the board for their consideration.
So we need a motion?
I'll make a move that we move this up to the full board tomorrow.
Okay, second, okay. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Think we're there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. With that, the program committee, P3 committee, adjourned.
All righty. So next, I will call the Program Delivery Committee to order. We are going to hear a report on a digital delivery overview presented by Sam Woods, our state roadway design engineer. Sam, it's all yours.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, members of the board, and Deputy Commissioner. My name is Sam Woods. I'm the state roadway design engineer here at GDOT, but for this presentation, I'll be wearing a different hat, which is a BIM advocate at GDOT. Now, BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and we'll dive into those details in just a few minutes. And to say that I appreciate this opportunity to present to you all this afternoon is an understatement, because I honestly do believe this to be GDOT's foundational initiative right now. And why is that? That's because it enables communication, collaboration, and most importantly, decision-making on essentially every other initiative that GDOT is undertaking, at least those initiatives that deal with data. Having said that, it is not the most straightforward concept or the easiest thing to explain in just a few minutes. So to help with that, I'd like to draw your attention to the diagram on the right side of my introduction slide here from Federal Highway. The top of this diagram is where we are right now as an industry, both nationally and here at GDOT, and the bottom is the goal. And throughout my presentation, you'll hear me say the phrase life cycle of an asset and life cycle phase many times. And here's what I mean by that. Life cycle phases are simply the phases that those assets go through. An example of a phase is design, construction, asset management and maintenance, and then planning and programming. And an asset's life cycle is simply its journey all throughout those life cycle phases. So if we could please keep in mind that diagram as we dive into the presentation. I'd like to start our conversation by taking us all the way back to last month's committee meetings, please. When our state utility administrator, Nick Fields, showed these slides, and it facilitated a wonderful conversation. And that conversation included words like moonshot and utopia, and it included Nick saying that he has a dream. Well, I'm here to say that I share that dream for the future of GDOT with them. The technology to view existing and proposed utilities in the field on an iPad exists right now today. It's just that technology is only one of 4 pillars of BIM implementation. Nick also discussed his office's initiative to convert CAD to GIS and vice versa. This is the quintessential example of what BIM is all about. And why is that? That's because CAD and GIS are 2 different technologies that both operate within their own set of standards. CAD is used mostly in survey, design, and construction, and GIS is used mostly in operations, maintenance, and planning and programming. So getting these 2 technologies to talk to each other will take a lot of work, but it will reap immense benefits. I do want to point out before I dive in that Nick's leadership and the initiatives within his office are truly representative of all, essentially, offices dealing with this at GDOT. So that being said, here's the outline of my presentation this afternoon. Let's start with what is BIM. So what does BIM mean? Let's start by breaking down that acronym. BIM means Building Information Modeling. Building is exactly what you're thinking of, a building like the one we're sitting in this afternoon. That's where this concept originated, when there were different types of engineers and architects working on the same design, realizing it was challenging to confirm that a water line didn't conflict with an HVAC duct, for example. Well, now this technology is moving from the vertical industry to the horizontal industry. In other words, from buildings to roads. And BIM for infrastructure is now the term that Federal Highway has coined. So you'll see some similarities here. And to be honest, the terminology is still evolving in our industry, which is just one example of the somewhat complex nature of this. The title of my presentation, Digital Delivery, similarly is about the same concept. There are slight differences here, but for the purposes of this presentation, we can think of all of these phrases as being synonymous. So the operative phrase for me in all of these words that you're seeing on the screen is information modeling. This is really what this whole initiative is all about, modeling our information or organizing our data. Here is Federal Highway's published definition of BIM for infrastructure and GDOT's working definition. And I've highlighted in blue the phrases that stick out to me: collaboration, data, assets through their life cycle. And one way I like to think about BIM personally is that it's recognizing that the data about our assets itself is an asset, and we need to treat it accordingly. So to round out this definition, a few more examples of what BIM is not and what it is, which will hopefully help. Nick showed you an example of a 3D model. I am also about to show you an example of a 3D model. That is an important part of what BIM is, but it is not everything. Instead, it's an information model. Everybody thinks 3D and thinks geometry, but geometry is just one type of information. There's all types of other information that we really care about at GDOT. BIM is not just project-focused, although it can be used to deliver projects. Again, it's much more broad than that. As we'll see in a few minutes, the amount of time that an asset spends in a project is relatively small. It's not an engineering initiative, although engineers will need to be involved. This involves everybody at GDOT who has a hand in an asset. One common misconception about BIM is that it's all about getting everybody to go to the same software or same operating system, when in fact BIM is the exact opposite of that. It's about letting people use the systems they're currently using and instead getting the data from those systems to be interoperable. And it certainly is not a quick solution. This is a slow, deliberate, strategic transformation, as we'll see throughout the presentation. So what is the problem? What are we trying to solve here? The problem in one phase, as I would describe it, is that we experience significant information loss across our life cycle, and especially after a project is constructed and during the operations and maintenance phase. And that's illustrated on the bottom dashed red line you see on your screen on this diagram from Federal Highway. And instead, what we want to move towards in order to have high quality, reliable data is to the upper line on this graph here, a life cycle management approach to managing our assets. In order to do that, we will recognize that there are multiple transfers or handoffs or handshakes where this data passes from one group to another. So we want to enter that data once and use it many times. In the FHWA diagram on the left, you'll notice that all these phases look the same. And by that I mean they're the same size. And in the world of many of us in this room, myself included, we are highly focused on design and construction because that's what it's all about, delivering our projects. However, if we look at a 2-scale time graph on the right side of the screen, we'll notice that for a particular asset, in this case a GDOT bridge, It's only about 5% of that bridge's life that occur in design and construction, and the remaining 95% of its life is in maintenance and asset management. So we need to figure out a way how to get this data from design and construction into asset management. What are some expected benefits of BIM? For me, the number one answer here is simply better decision-making. And we do that through making our data interoperable. We do that with keeping a context of the life cycle in mind, and we do that through better communication and collaboration. And in fact, some of my colleagues nationally use this as their definition of BIM. What is BIM really? It's just the next way we communicate. It's just like how we email each other now instead of writing letters. It's just how we use CAD now instead of hand drafting. We can also expect increased efficiency and cost savings, mostly from these bullets below here. Minimize change orders in construction, eliminating duplicate data, and streamlining our processes. So to illustrate this point, I'd like to take you through a couple of real-life current-day scenarios here for two of these specific handoffs. The first one is the handoff from design to construction, known as letting, which you all are very familiar with. And the second handoff is from construction to operations and maintenance, which are as-builts. And as I take you through this story, what I hope it does is just demonstrate the way our industry has evolved over time as technology and data have become a bigger and bigger piece of what we do. Now, here's an example of a 3D model for a roadway. These models were developed by engineers in my office, the Office of Roadway Design. The software we use to develop our 2D plan sets, which are our contractual documents for lettings, that software requires us to create a 3D model like the ones you're seeing on your screen. So what do we do to create PDF plan sheets from a model like this? Well, we slice and dice up our model manually, tediously, and inefficiently, and give the contractor slices and dices like this. One view from above, one slice along the roadway, and multiple slices across the roadway. And what do contractors do with these 2D PDFs? They reassemble them back into this 3D model, and they do that manually, tediously, and inefficiently. So this is an example of data loss in the handoff from design to construction. To further carry this example, what you're looking at now here is a PDF plan sheet of a pavement design that an engineer put together. What type of pavement are we using? How thick is it? How wide is it? Etc. That PDF was developed from a CAD file that you're seeing right here in our document software program. And I'm using pavement as an example here because it's a critical asset for GDOT, very valuable. But for this example, you could substitute any other asset that GDOT cares about. Here are two CAD files, back to Nick's presentation, that show the location of existing and proposed utilities. Here are two CAD files that show the location of existing and proposed right-of-way. Here's a CAD file that shows the location of all our environmental sensitive areas on a project. And lastly, a CAD file showing our drainage design, an extremely valuable and critical asset for safety at GDOT, very challenging to manage because as soon as we build it, we bury it. And where does all this data go after the design phase? For the most part, it stays in the design phase. Okay, now we're out in construction. We are measuring, inspecting, testing for compliance with specifications and adherence to the plans, and we're generating more data. We're generating more information for things like asphalt mix formula approvals and eventually for an as-built document. So where does all this data go after the construction phase? For the most part, it stays within the construction ecosystem. So now let's fast forward 20 days after a project is built, never mind 20 years after a project is built. And that asset manager is looking for information about their asset to program the next project, to program the next maintenance work, etc. How are they looking for that information? Manually, tediously, and inefficiently. If you happen to know a project number, that helps. If you don't, you can look on our database to find that project. If you do find the project, you are shifting through hundreds, potentially thousands of PDF files, and you are looking for a specific piece of information within that PDF file. And if you do find what you're looking for, you might find something like this. This is an example of an as-built sheet from a GDOT project, where a utility, for one reason or another under construction, was installed in a different location than we expected it to be in design. So this can be a helpful piece of information if this is what you're looking for, but this is still a static 2D PDF. It is project-based. The location is not exact. So imagine a much more detailed search. For example, if we were looking to find every sign that existed along a 20-mile roadway, and those signs were installed over 5 different projects over 10 different years and 20 different maintenance projects. Imagine the effort that it would take to figure out every sign that was along a roadway. So that story I just told is a story of the top diagram. How that story might change on the bottom diagram very quickly and oversimplified, I'll grant you, is basically an engineer embedding all the data that those downstream customers care about into their model. That data is automatically transferred downstream to construction. Construction either confirms its accuracy, modifies its location, and even adds valuable information that I might not care about in design, but asset managers certainly care about, like date of installation, manufacturer, and warranty. That information is then transferred to asset managers, and the whole while this data is flowing through the life cycle, planners, programmers, and engineers on the next project can access it. And this data would not be project-based. It would be asset-based, geolocated, very quickly searchable by human or machine. So that scenario, that bottom diagram, is the dream that Nick described last month. Who cares about BIM? Well, the spoiler alert here, at least in my opinion, is that everybody does, or at least they should. So within GDOT, here's a color-coded org chart of the groups who will either influence BIM and or be directly affected by it. It's essentially all of us. We're very lucky to have a group of champions at GDOT in these roles, running their own pilots, as I mentioned earlier. And let's zoom out to the state of Georgia. Who cares about BIM? The Transportation Summit was last week. GPTQ is where a lot of our great action is happening on this topic. A 30-year partnership, which we're very lucky to have among GDOT, ACEC, and the Highway Contractors Association. They formally support GDOT's initiatives towards BIM and digital delivery. And what about nationally on the private sector? Both of these groups of people, engineers and contractors, both have a formal published white paper where they say things like ACEC will continue to support digital delivery, and ARTBA says that digital delivery and BIM should be a priority for FHWA and state DOTs. And how about nationally in the public sector? Well, certainly Federal Highway, as they've published their roadmap here for a national strategic roadmap for implementation, and also AASHTO, who published this resolution back in 2019, formally supporting BIM, and I've highlighted in green some phrases that stick out to me about data interoperability, et cetera. And our commissioner and chief engineer, as we speak, are attending the annual meeting right now for AASHTO, where this is sure to be a hot topic for discussion. Okay, so how does BIM get implemented at GDOT? The spoiler alert here is it's going to take a long work, and it's going to take a long time, a lot of work from a lot of people, but we can do it. And here's how we do it. Here are the 4 pillars that FHWA recommends advancing simultaneously. I'll talk about them each very briefly. For policies and processes, it's all about getting our workflows to evolve from paper to electronic to digital. And it's more than that too. We're going to need brand new policies that establishes whose job is it to create a piece of data, whose job is it to quality control that, to secure it, et cetera. Tools and technologies will be flooding the market here with this new initiative, all under the umbrella of making our exchanges more automated and bringing us towards some single source of truth called a connected data environment, where anybody at GDOT can access the information they need. It's going to require new training for all of our employees involved in this initiative, and also a mindset shift where some percentage of our jobs, for example, my job as an engineer, will start to become to some degree a steward of the assets that we are designing. And lastly, data as an asset, treating this strategically. The foundation of data is making sure it's good quality so that it can be interoperable. And our approach at GDOT will be to slowly and incrementally advance, or to take baby steps, as I like to put it, advancing all 4 of these pillars. I would like to hit data with just a few more slides before I move on and give an example here. Maybe some of you all might remember when there were 2 competing word processing software, MS Word and Perfect. And what would happen if we tried to take one file from one software and open it in the other one? You wouldn't be able to do it. You'd get an error message. And that was until something called a PDF came along. And what did the PDF do? The PDF allowed users of one software to see the output without having to actually buy that software. So that was a game changer. Now you can imagine at GDOT, we have many more than just 2 groups of people delivering our projects, and they are using many more than just 2 software to implement these projects. And as a reminder, BIM is not about getting us all to the same software. Instead, it's about getting our software to be interoperable. So here's one way we could make our software interoperable with each other, but it's inefficient, time-consuming, and places the focus on the application instead of the content itself. Well, a better way to get our software to be interoperable is to use something called an open data standard. And the one I'm showing here on the screen as an example is called IFC, or Industry Foundation Classes. IFC can be thought of more than just a file type here. This is a blueprint or a template or a structured way for us to organize our information. So I find a very helpful analogy here to be that IFC, or any open data standard, it's like the PDF of BIM. So why is that? Because it's an open standard. It's not tied to any specific software vendor. It enables cross-platform compatibility. It's a universal language and, in fact, a foundation, for collaboration. And it also happens to be endorsed by AASHTO. So lastly, when will BIM be implemented at GDOT? And the spoiler alert here, as you might guess, is that it will take a long time. To give you a flavor for what's happening right now, I'd like to give you a few examples. GDOT is heavily involved in the national conversation, both on the AASHTO side, the group of state DOTs, and the federal highway side. We're learning from experts, learning from other DOTs, and all DOTs are on the same journey we are. GDOT has received 2 grants from federal highway to move the needle as far as BIM and digital delivery, one just finishing for our roadmap for implementation, and one just beginning so we can pilot an open data exchange. Our industry group, as I previously mentioned, GPTQ, is where a lot of our progress is being made, and many office-level initiatives are underway. Where might we go in the future? I personally believe that our next big baby step here is doing pilots for specific use cases. And those 2 use cases are what you're seeing on your screen: contractual model elements, which is talking about the design to construction exchange. What can we take from the model instead of a set of plans? And digital as-built is that exchange from construction back to asset management. Also, GDOT may decide in the future, as many other DOTs already have, is to establish formal roles dedicated specifically to BIM or digital delivery. So in Georgia, we are in a good place overall. We have built a strong foundation. We are well positioned to move forward with this initiative. We have done the outreach, both internal and external. We have the understanding and the buy-in from the industry. We are planning to move forward, and the next big step here is action. The diagram on the right side of the screen is Federal Highway's roadmap to BIM maturity, and I would like to draw your attention to the bottom of that diagram, which indicates this is something on the order of a decades-long journey. And GDOT, with all its great work laying the foundation right now, I would estimate our progress on that journey to be right about here. So thank you very much to the team. Oh, before I get to thanking the team, let's wrap up with some key takeaways where we answer some questions from the outline to bring it all back together. So what is BIM? It's a work method, it's framework, it's a context using open data standards to manage our assets. Why do we need BIM? In my opinion, one sentence: to make better decisions. Who cares about BIM? Everybody, all the letters in Georgia at GDOT and nationally do. How do we implement it? By advancing these 4 key pillars that FHWA recommends through pilot projects, learning from those pilots, taking strategic incremental steps or baby steps. When will it be implemented at GDOT? We're on the journey right now, and we can expect to be BIM mature sometime in 2030. So now on to the thank yous, which will take a different format because we're not a formally structured group at GDOT working on this. So I do want to thank our executive leadership at GDOT for allowing and encouraging our participation in the national conversation and to have presentations like this to the board. Thank you to my fellow office heads who support this in critical roles across the department, all the engineers and CAD support people working on it. We're all doing this in our spare time, advancing this initiative that we're all very passionate about. Zooming out to Georgia, again, thank you to GPTQ, all of our current subcommittee members and past members, and nationally, thank you to Federal Highway and AASHTO for their leadership. So, Mr. Chairman, this concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Sam, thank you for that. I'm hoping sometime in the near future you might have a more elementary thing of this so that I can have a chance of understanding it. But thank you for that presentation. Does anyone have a question? Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr. Lewis. I was just going to say it's pretty clear that BIM is pretty simple.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll plan on doing is next month, we'll just go ahead and bring you guys a test. So we'll test your knowledge on what you learned today. But in all seriousness, I do want to thank Sam and his team that's working on this. Sam has emerged not just as a leader for GDOT, but a leader nationally on this concept, on this initiative. I'll go even one higher key takeaway than his last slide there. This whole concept of digital delivery, building information modeling, is the transformational thing in the transportation industry. This will be similar transformation, just like it was when we went from hand-drawn plans to computer-drawn plans, but even more impactful because now we're not just talking about being more efficient and accurate in the plans that we develop, but in truly looking at our infrastructure through its full life cycle. So this building information modeling is not just, as Sam said, not just about design or construction, but how that carries forward into operations, maintenance, for the decades of an asset's life cycle. So it truly is transformational stuff, and I appreciate Sam and his team's work in leading this for the department.
Thank you for that. That's incredible. Any questions? Ms. Dunn?
Excuse me. This is more of a statement, but I think this would be a very good presentation for our transportation committees at our state capitol, so that they will just know what you're doing and know what we're doing. But it's just so impressive, and to be so complicated, it is simple. But, I know it's not. But, I'm like, why didn't we do this before? But I would love for our legislators to know that, because when it comes to budget time and forward-thinking leadership, we've got to grow them up in the GDOT world.
Great.
Anyone else have a question or comment from the committee? If not, I have two really quick questions. It seems like you're creating new and more data when you start this journey. And my question is, where will this data be stored?
So data security is an important component of this overall initiative. So data governance is the phrase you'll hear often used to describe this, and how the data is secured is an absolutely instrumental component to it. That's about as detailed as I can personally answer the question. And just one other thing I'd like to add on to that response is that we wouldn't necessarily be creating more data than we are. It's just that we're taking the data that we find valuable right now and organizing it in a better way. Another key component here, because this is such a transformative initiative, is we have to resist the urge to do everything. It's becoming more and more easy to collect data. We don't want to collect everything just because we can. We want to be able to explain we need it for this purpose, for this business case. And securing that data is a critical part of it.
So the volume of data may or may not be a factor, and that kind of impacts my second question. If it was a factor, does having storage capacity affect the schedule at all, or is that built into what you explained?
I would say that's built into what I explained, and I'm very much on the verge of being outside of my wheelhouse here. Okay. But I would not consider data storage, the challenge of data storage, to be a limiting constraint on implementing BIM. It's something we're already dealing with currently, and BIM will honestly help us organize and store that data even more efficiently.
Okay. Anyone else before we adjourn? Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. If nothing else, the Program Delivery Committee will now be adjourned.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole and ask Sam Harris, our traffic engineer, to give us a safety update.
All right. So good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Deputy Commissioner. I want to thank you for the time and opportunity. And I don't think you could have got the scheduling right, because the back-to-back SAM presentations is going to be perfect for us today. And I'll try to live up. Sam, you did a great presentation, so I'll try to live up to it. Recently, you heard from Ron Knezovich. He's over our safety program now at the TMC. He talked more in detail about safety projects and the before and after analysis within those projects, and we saw those crash reductions. Today, in my presentation, I'm going to be a little more broad. I'm going to talk high level about some innovation pieces that we have coming out of our traffic operations group, and holistically how GDOT is approaching safety. But I'm going to get into first some of the innovation pieces and some of the things I want to tell you that are great in terms of what's going on here. So currently, right about 30 minutes ago, FHWA was landing here in Atlanta to come over to the TMC tomorrow in order to do what is called an HSIP scan tour. So to remind you, HSIP is the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So those are the federal funds that we get from FHWA in order to do safety projects and design safety projects out of the safety program that I mentioned Ron oversees now. Now the scan tour part is typically done in a variety of different fashions, but what that means is FHWA is coming to Georgia Georgia to talk with us about how we are actually conducting our HSIP program, the Highway Safety Improvement Program. They're also bringing a couple states with them. What that means is that they're impressed with what they've seen from us over the past several years, that they actually want to sit down with us over a period of a couple days and learn more about what we have done. So excited to give you all an update once we've concluded that. Next up is the AASHTO Safety Summit and Peer Exchange. This was recently at the end of October. This is another national stage that was well represented by GDOT. Myself, Ron, Scott Higley, and our commissioner was there. Amongst all of us, we moderated multiple sessions. We presented at multiple sessions. One of Ron's presentations he did on near-miss analysis, which I'll get into here in a few slides, had over 100 people show up at 8 a.m. So that tells you that a lot of people are really interested in what we're doing here in Georgia. What we also highlighted from that conference is a workshop that we were able to proceed with as well. One thing before I dive into the workshop, as the voting member for the AASHTO Safety Committee for GDOT, I was able to see this transportation summit or the safety summit actually grow. Originally, about 4 years ago, it was 40 people from state DOTs meeting and talking about safety. This most recent summit, we had 400 professionals across the nation talking and growing in terms of what that safety looks like for us. But going back to that workshop, the workshop that we led was actually on this application. You may remember this from previous presentations, but what this is AASHTO Safety, powered by Numetric. You probably have heard Numetric. What this application does is allows practitioners, whether it be engineers, planners, et cetera, to be able to look at crash data and do quick analytics on it, to understand exactly what the crash trends may be on different levels. Could be a city level, could be a district level, it could be an entire state level. What I want to talk about is that we actually are leading innovators in this space as well with this software. We actually have created a left turn crash analysis module. What that allows us to do is be able to pinpoint more precisely left turn crashes throughout the state, allows us to coordinate with our SIGOTS program to be able to update left turn phasing and timing, but it also allows us to build infrastructure improvements. But what this also does is when Georgia has come up with an idea and we work with Numetric, that then makes it available to every other state that purchases AASHTO Safety. Another example of this is a collision diagram. By no means did we as the safety group or GDOT come up with a collision diagram. This has been done for decades now. But what we did do is be able to create the functionality within the tool that allows users to be able to quickly create a collision diagram here in our state. And who are those users? Just to remind you, it's everyone here within the DOT has access to it, but we also make this accessible to any local agency in the state for free. And that also goes to any consultants that are working on behalf of GDOT, also with the local agencies as well. And perhaps one of the most exciting things to come out of Numetric is the alternative design. This is not something that, again, we as GDOT actually created, but it is something that GDOT is actually unveiling first before any other state agency or state DOT in the nation. And we barely beat out my friends in Wisconsin on this one. But what this actually does, it allows us, as you know, whether it be planners, designers, engineers, to predict crashes in the future using site characteristics from the roadway, using other information such as volume. And so what the benefit of this is when we look at projects and we're trying to be good in practical design, where are we getting the best bang for our buck in terms of safety? What is needed on a project when it comes to safety? And this is something that actually we've been working with the roadway group and we've been working with the design policy group, and we'll continue to lead in terms of innovation on this standpoint. Talking about first, here is motorcycle guardrail. This is also a first for the state of Georgia in the sense that we've just finished a pilot or a pool fund study with the Texas Transportation Institute. Within this study that looked specifically at motorcycle safety. And one of the items that came from this was motorcycle guardrail. And what makes it motorcycle guardrail is simply placing the third rail underneath the guardrail that itself. And what that does for a motorcyclist is if they were to get into a crash and have a collision with the guardrail, that means they would not get stuck or go under the guardrail, which is particularly important based on the data that we've seen in Georgia there has been instances of that. So this is the first location. This is on State Route 11, just south of Blairsville, Georgia, so northeast Georgia. Again, very data-driven in this. This was a location that had motorcyclist crashes on it, but this is something that we're going to be looking at statewide because motorcycles crashes do take up a small percentage of what our fatalities look like. I also like to recognize Dave Adams. You may have met him, you may have seen him present, but he actually was awarded the Georgia Governor's Public Safety Award recently. But a few months ago, he was also awarded the Beacon of Safety Award, which was the first rendition of this award for all the work that he's doing on the Ash to Wear Safety new metric. And he also just recently won an award yesterday I picked up for him at the ITS Georgia section for the work I'll show you here in a few slides. So crash data trends. I want to talk with you about the state of safety in the state of Georgia. So let's dive into some trends, and I want to give you some perspective. So U.S. roadway fatal crash trends. So this is showing you fatal crashes, the number of fatal crashes since 2010. And as you can see, from 2010 leading up to around 2020, which was the beginning of the pandemic, they were up and down, in terms of small jumps up and down. However, during the pandemic, that rose, and mainly because of driver behavior during that time frame. But what we are seeing is a decline from those spikes. I mean, we got close to 44,000 fatalities in the U.S., but we're seeing that decline, which is very positive. Even in 24 is lower than the 40,000 that's showing here. It's around 39,000. So keep that in mind. So when I show you the Georgia stats here in a few seconds. And you may ask yourself, well, what are the reasons why we have so many fatalities on our roadways in the nation and even here in Georgia? The main reasons is driver behavior. According to NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 94% of our fatal crashes are attributed to driver behavior, which is mainly related to speeding, distracted driving, and driving impaired. Another category in that is seatbelt usage. To date, when I looked at the data before coming to the meeting, 30% of our fatalities in Georgia can be attributed to people not wearing their seatbelts. And that number fluctuates. It can go as high as 50%, but really the age group that tends to have the least buckling up ability is our youth. It's the 15 to 24-year-old group. For whatever reason, they're the ones that we see that are not buckling up enough when we look at the data. And as you can see on the left-hand side, especially when you're in the back seat, if you're getting into a crash that has a lot of energy, you have a much higher chance of not being able to walk away from that crash. But if you do buckle up, you're 7 times likely to be able to walk away from that crash. And I also want to note that it's really important, especially if you have young children such as I do, that you know when to transition them from a car seat to a booster seat to a regular seat. It's particularly important so where that seatbelt kind of comes across their body. So that's important, and this is also big attributed to what we do in the Keep Georgia Safe initiative in terms of promoting buckle-up statistics. Another thing to highlight in terms of the data, going back to the Georgia side, is we have safety performance targets we provide to FHWA each year. We then, the targets that we see here are fatalities, fatality rate, serious injury rate, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. I'm very pleased to tell you that this year we've met or made significant progress to all of those categories. So we were told recently by FHWA that we actually met that, which is outstanding. Good movement there in terms of the safety targets. But looking at the data as we see today, and in comparing to the same day as of last year, we are down 14% in terms of our fatal crashes. Do I think that's where we're going to be at the end of the year? Likely not. Reporting has a lag to it from police officers, reporting into the DOT. We typically see a couple-month lag on that standpoint, but we also have some big holidays coming up with Thanksgiving, with Christmas, and we unfortunately do see spikes during that time frame. So I just want to urge everyone that's listening today, please be careful on our roadways, especially during the holiday season. Other than that, I want to highlight the pedestrian standpoint. We're seeing those crashes decrease as well, and that roadway lane departure double-digit decrease for multiple years in a row, which showcases that we're doing a good job here in Georgia with those particular projects like rumble strips. Looking at a similar graphic that we showed you with the USA fatalities, well, it's a very similar trend. Now, not every state has the same trend lines as we do comparatively to the U.S. Numbers that I showed you, but you can see that we were on a decline in terms of fatality crashes here in the state of Georgia until you get to the beginning of the pandemic. Then they increased, and mainly, again, that was attributed to driver behavior. However, they are declining into 24, and I just showed you the numbers for 25 to date. This is good news, but I don't want to get anyone too comfortable, because this is a very defining moment for us in Georgia, because we want to see that number continue to decline, because right now we're kind of stabilizing where we were pre-pandemic. So again, a big moment for us in terms of watching that number continue to decline. Seeing that same trend line for non-motorized fatalities, so this is your pedestrians, your cyclists, it is a little more variable, but again, saw that spike and seeing that decrease after the pandemic, and again, showcasing just a few slides ago that we are continuing to see that decrease in 2025. So I'm going to hit on a couple more innovation pieces as I wrap up the presentation. I mentioned to you Ron's presentation that got over 100 people at an 8 a.m. presentation, which is very impressive. This is what mainly the presentation was about. It's near miss detection. You probably have heard about this. It's using technology like cameras to be able to observe and actually measure when people almost get hit, which is particularly important when it comes to pedestrians and cyclists, because those type of crashes are often underreported, but they're also often random in nature. So we're able to use this information of a near miss and actually relate it to what an actual crash may be, just because we want to be proactive on our roadways when it comes to safety. So we're able to use this information to justify safety projects. And we are a part of the FHWA Everyday Counts initiative on this topic, which also indicates that we are leaders when it comes to this type of analysis in the nation. One thing I will highlight as well, you've heard a lot from our ITS World Congress and the great work that many people have done from our DOT when it comes to this. But I want to go back to that day one deployment district. And I just want to emphasize even more that a lot of the technology you see with V2X its basis is safety in terms of what it is, what it's meant for. So when we look at one of the locations that was in the Day 1 deployment district, which was State Route 3, was Northside Drive at Ivan Allen, they were using what is called LiDAR, which is a detection technology, similar to cameras, similar to radar, but it's a lot more precise and captures a lot more information. What they were able to do with this, and you may have heard other presentations, I know the commissioner has said it in his presentations, but you were able to detect pedestrians at that intersection walk before the vehicle even arrived at that intersection. And that is groundbreaking achievements in terms of promoting safety when it comes to our roadways, and as we continue to push forward with that deployment. This is the award I mentioned earlier that Dave received recently. This is the Crash Data Reporting Instructions. It may seem trivial, it may seem simple, but what this is it's leveraging our partnerships with law enforcement across the state and providing training on how to make sure they properly fill out a crash report. As you can imagine, when you're on a crash scene, it's a little hectic, so we understand that everything may not be perfect, but there was definitely much appreciation from law enforcement agencies when we were able to create this for them, and there'll be more added to this in terms of video training as well. And talk about changing driver behavior, we finished up a pilot. This is something that you may have been aware of, but we actually worked with a company to actually create an app that you can download on your phone. With this application, it actually observes your driver behavior. So harsh acceleration, harsh braking, cornering, phone use are a couple of the things that it would monitor. When people opted in to download this, their main incentive of doing that was to get that score, their safety score, to be particularly high. 94 is a really good safety score that you're seeing here, but the higher that safety score, the more chances they had to be able to get a prize from the Atlanta Braves. So that was the unique partnership that we brought in. But let me showcase how this actually was effective. Based on the last numbers that I got from the end of the pilot, 37% of the drivers that were using this app were less distracted. 20% of the drivers using this app sped less than what they usually did. When that's comparison to every other usage-based insurance rate, this changed people the way they drive behavior because they were aware of what they were doing. And that's really big when it comes to what we're trying to do on the education and outreach standpoint, which is a nice segue to safety education. You've seen this graphic before, but what I'm going to showcase here is that we're introducing a new partner. That new partner is Propel Atlanta. This is an organization that's based here in the Metro Atlanta area. They are a nonprofit, and they're going to help us do more in terms of the safety education outreach, but also in terms of community support when it comes to safety as well. Going to give you a few updated numbers. Got these from Katina recently. Just wanted to make sure we showcase the great work that's being done on the Keep Georgia Safe initiative, because Katina's doing a great job leading that program. To date, and this is probably a little bit higher, we've reached about 140,000 teachers in the state of Georgia, which is absolutely amazing. And on top of that, we're getting very close to reaching 1 million kids in terms of the materials, in terms of the lesson plans, posters, videos, etc. So again, great work by the team on that. And me and Katina recently had the opportunity to go to the Georgia Education Technology Conference, which was immensely entertaining to me because as walking around from a state DOT perspective, we kept getting questions of like, why is the state DOT here? Which we were very prompt to say, we have great resources with the Keep Georgia Safe. You can see our booth set up there, that we were able to interact with teachers across the state, superintendents across the state, and let them know that these resources are available. I think we had a great time encouraging people to be able to use those resources. And I'll leave you on the STEAM camp. It was almost a year ago, I was in front of you talking about the inaugural STEAM camp. Couldn't convince my wife to come today, though, to give the presentation with me, but that's okay because I'm just going to give you a quick recap. We were able, again, to partner with ITE and the Art It Out Therapy Center, but we also brought in that third partner with Grady. So you can see it up in the right-hand corner. That is an ambulance from Grady with healthcare professionals talking to kids, telling them in reference to like post-crash care. We also had new interactive sessions where we actually had kids actually create mini traffic signals that actually lit up as battery powered. And we also had bridge design challenges that we introduced as well. We had over 100 applicants this year. I mean, that means we actually had a wait list. So we got to start thinking about, is there a chance to grow this or not? But that was tremendous. We gave over $3,000 in scholarships to kids to attend this camp as well. And what I'll end on is that this camp is further emphasizing to get kids interested not only in engineering, but get kids interested in GDOT as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Sam, thank you for that presentation, both very interesting and very important, I think. Two questions for you, I guess, simple here. Can you tell me, do you have, where your data sources are? Are you linked to all the police department, sheriff department, and basically, do you have confidence that every time there's a crash or a fatality, that data is going to go into your system there so you do your reports?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. According to state law, we as GDOT are the repository for all crash reports throughout the entire state. I do have a dedicated staff member that is a law enforcement liaison that coordinates with each law enforcement agency. So if we do see a gap in terms of reports that are not turned in, we'll just reach out directly and be able to get an understanding of why that we didn't receive it. We are receiving almost nearly 100% electronic reports nowadays, which is great, especially in terms of a staff perspective of going through those reports. So I do have a high confidence that we're getting all the reports that we need, though that is kind of an open-ended question because just because that there's not a crash report doesn't mean there's not an injury. People may not fill out the crash reports for various reasons. So we are working with healthcare professionals on how to link our two databases up, because if you look at the hospital records and data that are coming out of that side, there typically is more injuries related to car crashes than what we're seeing in our database. So I think there's a lot of opportunity moving forward with that.
Oh, thank you for that. And can I assume your data is broken down both with fatalities and crashes so that you could have both things shown for particular locations throughout the state?
Yes, sir. That application I showed you earlier with the Ashtabula Safety New Metric, we can slice and dice that data in a lot of different fashions in a lot more efficient way. I'd be happy to showcase that application for you so you can see, but you can break it down by crash severity, manner of collision, the type of collision, all the way down to the color of the car that was involved in the crash. So essentially anything that was on the crash report would be something that we would be able to filter by.
No, that's great, and maybe one last one, and I'll follow up with you afterwards here. I assume with this, and I think it would be very interesting for me as we start looking at where we're doing projects and other data that goes along, whether it's a rapid response project or something to that extent. I would be interested to see, for instance, in the 7th Congressional District, a map of where you see crash/fatality sites that are maybe one standard deviation or an order of magnitude above the average, so that would highlight the most dangerous spots within a particular area that we can kind of draw some information from and kind of think towards the future on. I assume that's doable with your database.
Yes, sir. Absolutely doable. We can rank in many different fashions from an intersection to a segment of roadway, and I can provide a ranking from a city to a county to a district to a state level. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to follow up and showcase that application for you and learn more about your congressional district in terms of where we could be looking at projects.
Super. Thank you very much for that, and again, for a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, Miss Emily?
I don't want you to feel any pressure, but I hope you will integrate with BIM at some point.
Yes, absolutely. Me and Sam will be heavily coordinating on that effort. So.
Any other questions? Or lively comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Ms. Emily Fish, Assistant State Maintenance Engineer, to give us a winter weather prep. How are you, Ms. Fish?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
Good.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board, and Deputy Commissioner. First off, I'm thrilled to be here on a day that it is sunny and nice and not snowing. There's no hurricanes out there, and this is the first year since 2015 that a major hurricane hasn't made landfall. Yes, thank you, whoever did that. First year since 2015 that a major hurricane hasn't made landfall on the coast somewhere in the United States. So it's been 10 years since we've made it almost through hurricane season. It ends on November 30th. So I just wanted to say that before we dove into winter weather. And it would be helpful if I put my presentation up. So we are here to talk about winter weather this week. And I'm just going to go over my agenda. So we'll talk about the winter weather outlook for this year. And then we will talk about what we've been doing over the last year in the State Maintenance Office and Emergency Operations to continue preparing throughout the year for winter weather operations. So, and the future of what our program. So this year, the winter weather outlook was released by the National Weather Service in October, and we are looking at what they call a weak La Nina year, which means warmer than average temperatures are forecasted for the southern United States, and less rainfall than normal. So, but as we all know, that only takes one forecast to change. This is just an outlook. You can't predict the weather this far in advance. So that's all it takes is one to change how we do our operations. So last year was also a weak La Nina year. I would like to point that out. So we had 2 large snowstorms last year. The same setup is there for this year. And we have already conducted one winter weather operation last week up in Districts 1 and 6. So this is Emily's outlook. This woolly worm decided to grace me with his presence at my house a couple of weeks ago. And according to this officially unofficial chart on the right, we are preparing for the worst, and we're going to be ready for it. So I never like to see these at my house. Yes, sir. Happy to do it. This is really scientific, too. So, pardon? because he is mostly dark all the way through, and according to the officially unofficial chart on the right, you will see that that means we're going to have a harsher winter weather season. It's officially unofficial. So I'm glad everybody got a kick out of that.
That's better than most predictions, probably.
So we'll keep moving forward. So some of the new things for this year, this is actually the second time we've done it, but we conducted a winter weather exercise that was statewide, but it focuses mostly on the metro response, so doing plowing and brining operations in the metro area. So we bring in Districts 2, 3, 4, and 5, and District 7 also comes in and helps, and they come to the metro area for 2 days, and they get to ride the routes in a less stressful situation, and it brings new and seasoned employees in for some of that training. It also gives us the ability to show them around the brine plant facility, and they get to go out and look at their maps and make sure that they are updated and changing according to our construction or our lane miles and different things that are going on out there. But we also get the ability to make sure that they know about any changes that we have made to just operations overall. So we also have all employees visit the salt barns in the metro area to make sure all the equipment is there and that the maintenance and the inventory of the salt looks good going into winter weather season. So we conducted this in September this year. We also provide safety and equipment training while they are there. And we are looking to make this a annual exercise where we bring everybody in. And before they leave, we do what we call an after-action review with the drivers who are out there on the roads and ask them what they'd like to get more training on, what we can do to change it, to keep it fresh for them. And so we're getting that feedback directly from them before they return home. So after last year, we had 2 snowstorms statewide. It was wild. But we decided we needed to start providing a standardized winter weather training to all the districts and provide the exact same information to everybody. So we came up with a curriculum. We also borrowed the name from Indiana DOT, so we appreciate them helping us out with Snow School and some of the curriculum. But we wanted to make sure we were imparting that institutional knowledge that we were starting to lose as people retire and making sure that everybody was getting the same standardized information. So we were talking about things like the brine salinity, so the salt to water ratio to make the right concoction for brine, and then the salt to rock ratio that we mix to put out on the roads. And then things like brining and plowing techniques. There are specific ways that you go out and brine and plow out on the roads. So we wanted to start doing that, and we have conducted that as of today in all 7 districts. They're in District 2 today doing the last snow school, so that we can start continuing to have some education around for snow and ice. So we are going to start looking at doing this annually, and so the State Maintenance Office and Emergency Operations, my team will go out to each district every year. But we're also going to make the curriculum available to the districts should they like to incorporate it into their programs. Most districts are already doing something like this, so this is just an extra tool in their toolkit. But we're also looking at different opportunities so that we can make a 3 or 4 year training program out of this so that they're not doing the exact same training every year. So we're looking at things like renting plow simulators, which gives them more time behind the wheel on the plows to try out driving in adverse conditions. And we're looking at different programs that we can incorporate into this. So we do want to thank the districts for helping with this. They had to help set up equipment and work with us to get this done. So it was really great. And here's some pictures from Snow School. Quite a few employees went through this, mostly maintenance employees. So operationally, we have done some changes as well. We have hired 2 new emergency operations liaisons, increasing our staff to 6. One of those has been specifically tasked to be a snow and ice subject matter expert. So he is working on Snow School and building this curriculum and working on the metro exercises, but he's also working with the districts to make sure we're ready to go throughout the winter weather season. So we are also cross-training in the state maintenance office. So myself, Damon, and Brandon can all be able to answer all the questions and do emergency operations so that we have some shifts and extra people in the room to help make decisions across the board. We are also enhancing our communications. So we are working to make sure that everybody in the state maintenance office who is working in the emergency operations center or the state operations center, that we are making sure we call each shift as we change shifts and introducing ourselves and talking through any decisions that have been made each shift and providing a briefing to the new shift leads coming on every time we switch. So every 12 hours, we're working on that. And then we have standardized what equipment we are reporting on when we are talking about how much we have out there and what we're using, and we've standardized that for each district so that our reporting across the board is the same. So we have also renewed our herbicide contracts and have a brine contractor in place for this season. We're really thrilled about that. And we have made some investments in District 7. So we have purchased a mobile brine unit so that we can supplement if we need to in District 7, but we can also move this brine unit around the state should we need to produce or supplement more brine down south. If we have an issue like we did last year, we now have more capability in that. And it's just a really great redundancy tool for up here. We have also, before I leave that, we have also purchased some brine storage tanks to put out at our current salt barns in the metro area so that the brine trucks that are out there do not have to come all the way back to Forest Park to fill up. So we have some extra storage facilities out there this year. So we have also spent a lot of this year researching and working with other states on best practices and what kind of materials they're using on the roads to start looking at some of those alternative solutions and seeing what else is out there. We're looking at new salt burn designs, and we've spent a lot of time talking to different states about that. So we're also looking at long-term strategy for the next 3 to 5 years of investments into snow and ice operations around the state. We have also moved our stockpile cameras to a more consolidated area so that our salt barns, we have a better inventory on what our stockpile is right now. It lays a visual, I've presented on it before, it's a visual camera in the barns, so it gives us a better and more accurate count of how much salt we have out there. We are also working with the districts on their 3 to 5 year plans for maintenance of the current salt barns out there and their plans to put more salt barns out there and more storage facilities and things of that nature. So we've been working on that with them as well. And then we are also, we have updated our salt barn inventory for more information, but we also worked with procurement to change our salt purchasing procedure and simplify that procedure a little bit to expedite the shipments of the salt coming back into the state. And then lastly, the future. We're continuing to invest in the employees and training. Doing snow school and this metro exercise each year is a huge step forward, and we're going to continue to do that. So some of the things that we've identified over this past year for the strategic plans over the next few years is to increase the salt storage statewide so that we have more salt storage available out there, which increases how much salt we would have in the state. And then the maintenance of the current barns that are out there and the equipment that we use during snow and ice. And then just efficiency overall on how fast we can brine and how fast we can salt, and increasing that efficiency throughout the area. And then we're also going to have a media day for the first time in December so that the media can come down to our facility, our brine facility in Forest Park, and get some footage and see the facility and how we make brine, and be able to talk with Natalie and Scott about what we're doing. And that is all. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your update. Very, very well said. I did want to talk with you maybe after the meeting. Grant Waldrop, my district engineer, and I were in Walker County, way far north in the state, last week, and the idea of extra salt barns in a possible facility or salt storage barn up in Walker County
Okay,
was discussed, and we were shown several locations. So if I could
sure,
maybe get with you after the meeting, that'd be great.
absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that, Emmett. My question is related to salt barns too. I saw a word in there about changing up the salt barn designs. And so my question is, and you know, when you represent very fast-growing areas and you have new people moving in from all over the place, you occasionally get the complaining phone call about the aesthetic nature of some of these salt barns. So I'm curious as to what kind of design, or if you have any in mind yet, some of these barns may be going to.
I personally have a salt barn design that I like that is out there. Connecticut DOT showed it to us. It is much more nice. It does not have a tarp on top. So I personally do have a design that I really think is a good design out there, and the lifespan on it is 40 to 50 years, which is really great. So I'd be happy to share that.
I'm sure there's, in some of these areas, the zoning does not allow some of these salt barns in those areas, but where they are allowed. Huh? Well, I don't know if it's in the right of way, yes.
So just to be clear, our priority is functionality, not aesthetics.
Any other questions? Shoot. What was that? I missed that. Good.
I do too, outside of Georgia.
Yeah. In Maine, they're fine. Anything else? If there's nothing else, thank you, Ms. Fisher. We stand adjourned.